my home studio engineers, thank you so much for checking out the Home Recording Network. The other day, somebody asked the question, what is parallel compression and when should they be using it in their mix? And I thought to myself, what a great question. And I also thought, wow, I can't believe I haven't made a video on this yet. So parallel compression is when we purposely over compress a track or a group of tracks and then blend that over compressed signal back in with the original signal. So let's say we have a vocal track over here with little to no compression on it. We would then send that signal over to something like an effects bus, compress the hell out of that effects bus, and then blend those two signals back together. And nowadays, with a lot of the plugins out there, we now have the ability to do this inside a lot of our compressors. So sometimes an effects bus isn't even needed for this mixing technique. Now, why would we do this in the first place, right? Why wouldn't we just put a medium amount or the appropriate amount of compression right on our tracks and skip setting all this stuff up? Well, the reason is that keeping 100% of this dry or uncompressed signal intact and blending in this heavy compression actually has a very interesting effect on our tracks. And this is specifically noticed when we apply this technique to groups of tracks. While normal compression lowers the highest peaks of a signal by applying downward compression, parallel compression actually raises up the quieter sounds of a signal and is technically classified as upwards compression. And this is just another tool that we have to get tighter sounding mixes. All right, so enough of the nerdy stuff. Let's show this in action. But first, if this video helps you out at all, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell to help me reach more engineers like yourself that need help. All right, so this technique can be used on really any element of the mix, from drums to a vocal track. Let's show this with drums first. So here's some drums that were recorded here. Yeah, so decent sounding drum kit, but we can give this drum kit more power. How I mix, and you may not do things like this, but I have all my individual elements sent to their own bus. So I have all my kick drums sent to their kick bus, the snares go to a snare bus, toms to their tom bus, and all the cymbals to a cymbal bus. And every one of these buses is being sent to bus 9, which is right down here. I call it my P drums bus, but that just means my parallel drum bus. So let's just unmute this bus. We're going to solo it. I'm going to bring up the fader a little bit. And if we play it, it should just kind of sound like the drum mix, right? Yeah, so it's everything besides, the only thing I leave out of this is the room microphone. So this is just really all the close mics. And then what we're going to do is, of course, compress the hell out of it. So in this case, I'm using the SSL bus compressor, but you can really use any compressor you like, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But here we just have the slowest attack, fastest release, 4-to-1 ratio. And if we flip this on, these drums should sound really compressed. Yeah, and if we move to a spot where the drums are moving a little quicker, we should hear some pumping. Yeah, we get some of that pumping effect with the slow attack and the fast release. So that's just a very overcompressed drum kit, right? That would not sound natural on its own. We don't actually want to use that much compression on our drum kit. But this blended in with our drum kit is going to be really awesome, and it's going to give our kit a lot more power. Now, a good tip if you are going to be doing this on drums or maybe bass guitar is dirty up this signal a little bit. So just as a little tidbit, I have Decapitator after it, and we're just adding a little dirt to this track. Yeah, just a little bit of grit there. So now what we can do is unsolo this parallel bus, and we are going to just bring that fader all the way down, play the drums, and then we're going to blend this signal in with our original drum track, just giving this a little bit more transient, a little bit more power. So let's do that. Yeah, so now if we actually play the drums and bring this parallel drum bus in and out, you're going to feel it when this track's muted, and you're going to feel it when this is turned on. We actually lose a lot of energy with this guy muted. So let's try that. Yeah, so we lose a lot of energy, especially in the kick and the snare, but it's more than that, right? It's the cymbals and everything that's kind of being blended and compressed on that parallel drum track. The drums actually sound pretty wimpy without this. I'll do it again. Like I was saying before, this can also be applied, via whatever compressor you're using in a lot of cases. So if your compressor has a mix knob, and we'll use just the kick drum for this example. So if we listen to the kick, yeah, so I'm using the distressor on this, and the distressor has a mix knob in it. So we could actually over compress this. That would be too much compression, but then we could use the mix knob to dial that back and blend in the compressed signal with the dry signal. So that is a form of parallel compression right there. And parallel compression can be used on any type of track. A lot of people use it on vocals, bass guitar, can really be applied to anything. And a lot of engineers rely on parallel compression more so than actual, track compression. One thing I do want to say though is that this type of parallel compression where you're actually doing it in the plugin, I don't like this as much because we're not actually, adding gain or adding volume to anything. So it's a way of using parallel compression, but I like using effect sends so that I'm not actually, changing the volume of my tracks, which you're doing when you're doing it just in the plugin. So I would urge you to, add gain by using an effects bus and then blending that signal in with the original track, um, more so than actually doing it this way in the plugin. All right, let's check this out on vocals now. Here's a mix that I recently did.
Building castles in the sky. I'll break your fall when you fly.
All right, so I did not use parallel compression on the vocals in this mix, but let's pretend that Mary Beth's voice is not sounding beautiful and it's not sitting perfectly in the mix. Maybe we want to bring her to the forefront or something like that. So let's go to the vocal track and we're going to create a send. Just going to create a bus here, and I'm going to send that at unity gain, and that created a track down here for us. Let's call it P Vox for parallel Vox. I'm going to right click it, hit create track, which not only makes a track in the timeline here, but allows us to move it around wherever we want. But for now, it's just sitting right next to the vocal track. And I'm going to actually send this, the output of it, to where all my tracks are sent, but you don't have to worry about that. So let's dial in some compression on this, right? Some heavy compression. So a compressor that a lot of people like to use on parallel compression buses like this is an 1176, but let's pretend like we don't have any of those plugins, and let's just use the stock Logic compressor and use their version of the Blueface 1176, which is the vintage FET up here. So I'm just going to adjust some settings, make it a 4-to-1. Actually, let's go crazier. Let's go 6-to-1 ratio. Let's go with a 40 millisecond attack time, fastest release. We'll hit solo on this bus, and let's dial in some compression here.
Building castles in the sky. I'll break your fall when you fly.
Yeah, I just brought that threshold down as far as it could go, and we're getting some heavy compression there. So now we could actually just blend this in like we did with the drums with the original vocal track. So let's do that.
Building castles in the sky. I'll break your fall when you fly. Wrap me up in clouds with you, and I'll be fine. Close your eyes and remember that.
Yeah, so her vocal doesn't really need that. This was already mixed pretty well, but you can see how this can just get a singer really in the forefront and sitting on top of the mix pretty easily and just very, very quickly. Now, again, this can be used across all the elements of your mix, and I personally am not someone who uses parallel compression a whole lot, but a lot of mix engineers rely on this. Andrew Sheps relies on it so heavily that has said that his faders are basically useless with all the parallel compression he uses, because he's sending all of his tracks to some sort of parallel bus. The actual faders, have less of an effect. So if he needs to pull down a vocal track, it's going to be pulling down, the volume that is being sent to his parallel compression bus. So you can get pretty deep in the weeds with this. And I do love the effect that it has on a lot of the elements of the mix, but it's just not something that I've gotten into a whole lot. Now, I think it is a more difficult way to mix, but some, producers and mix engineers just swear by it and just love what it brings to their mixes. So I definitely think you should try it out as much as you can. And I hope this video cleared some things up for you. If you didn't know what parallel compression was, I hope you have a better understanding of this technique now. Let me know if you have any questions. Happy mixing, guys. Hey guys, if you like this video, be sure to download your free Ultimate Home Studio Mix Guide with your go-to EQ and compression settings for all your tracks. And also be sure to register for my free online mix training that I hold a couple times a week so that you can learn how to make radio quality music from your home without breaking the bank.